Welcome, everyone. Today we have a special guest speaker, Ruth Maille, who is going to talk about the topic of partnership and collaboration. Ruth is a certified parent relationship coach. 30 years, she's owned and operated her own licensed daycare and preschool. Her training and extensive hands on experience help her build partnerships with both children and adults. So I'm proud to introduce Ruth Maille. Ruth, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved in this partnership aspect.
Hi, everybody. So, actually, what happened was I found myself divorced 11 years ago, and I had been, a mom, a wife, a daycare provider, and lost my entire identity. And I started doing self help things, different courses and stuff, and became more aware of why I did the things that I did. And then I started to look into certification. And how I came across this certification was I was sitting in my living room one night after entering the quote dating world online, and I felt like a fish out of water. So I saw this ad come up, and the ad, said, try to find yourself. And so I clicked on it and started an 8-week course and learned more about myself in the 8-week course than I could have even imagined. Totally changed my outlook on life, totally changed how I react to people. One of the things that I learned was, we always say there's two sides to every story. There's three, the one in the middle. But bottom line is, if you can look at the other side through a different set of glasses and see the other person is not misbehaving. And I use that with my kids all the time, like, what if you're not misbehaving? What if you're just instinctually doing what you're supposed to be doing and reacting that way? And over the years that I did these certifications and was licensed as a coach, I learned a lot about men, a lot about women. My daycare kids use these tools to navigate their relationships and their partnerships with their friends. And I even had one little girl that, went home one night. Her mom was having a terrible week, and her mom, she looked at it. And at the time we used the term human animal, which is our instincts. And she went home and she said, Mom, I think you need to check your human animal at the door. And so these partnership tools are amazing, and it changed my life. And so that's one of the reasons why I started writing books, because I wanted to be able to incorporate some of this stuff into the books. So that's how I came about it. And I love it. I'm only going to share like half of the tools with you because it's overwhelming. So I don't want to overwhelm everybody. So I use partnership in every aspect of my life, whether it's with my daycare children or my own kids or friends or business partners, etc. And there's certain tools that help people to make partnership choices be successful. And so when we're creating partnerships through collaboration, we can look at our lives and realize that partnership is everywhere, no matter where you're sitting. There's all types of partnerships. Collaboration, actually, the word means the action of working with someone or producing or creating something. And when we collaborate and we don't have partnership, the situation doesn't go very well. Problems arise. It can be really stressful, especially if expectations are involved, miscommunication, lack of clarity, not giving somebody the space that they need to sort things out. And when that happens, we end up not saying the right things or regretting what we're saying. So what I'm going to do is I'm giving you a foundation first, and then I'm going to share the tools with you. But all of these that we do are reactions. They're from our instincts when we're having that stressful moment. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to start with why we do these things instinctually, and then ways that you can recognize it when it happens and put you into a partnership space, and then tools that will help you navigate the good times as well as the most difficult times. And then I'm going to try and incorporate the examples of our authors and illustrators and editors and coaching all into this presentation. So the first slide is really the foundation, okay? And on the left, we call it the human normal, which is survival, right? It's our instincts. It's what we were born with. A human normal is all about survival. survival, right? It's our instincts that's driven by our primal biological instincts, okay? And the first reaction is what happens. And what happens is it comes from the back of your head, like the base of your neck. And so when you react, that's where it's coming from. And it takes a good 10 seconds to get to your prefrontal cortex, which is where your problem solving and your ability to make a good choice happens. So survival happens when there's a missed opportunity or a threat, or sometimes a risk that you might not take. So maybe you bought 1,000 books and now you're like, oh my God, I didn't think about that, right? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to sell them? So it's all about that survival. It's about a state of compulsion, right? You have no choice in it. It just happens. And what you experience is the fear. And that's what comes in. So most people might think this is fight, flight, or freeze, right? When you have this fear come up. And the little picture that I put on here was it's your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions are all innate and serves as a survival mechanism. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. We want our survival to come out because if, say, you're walking down the street and you feel somebody behind you, you'll be ready to jump, you'll be ready to react, and that could save your life. So we do want our survival instincts. What I want to stress is that there's no room for instinct in partnership with another person. Now, the human spirit side of that is a conscious choice. So that's when you actually get to that brain, when you're in your prefrontal cortex and you actually make that choice of, do I oppose these instincts? I'm aware of them. What choice can I make? So stubbing your toe, right? It takes that 10 seconds to get there. And then you go, oh yeah, okay, I stubbed my toe. Oh, it hurts, but I stubbed my toe. So you get out of that instinct, that survival mode. In human spirit, you're also free to choose, right? If you ask somebody for something, they can't be accountable for it, which is one of the first tools. You actually have a backup plan. Somebody else can actually help you with that. So it's a freedom to choose and freedom to allow the other person to choose, not forcing them into doing something that they don't want to do. And it could be as simple as, editing a paper. That editor doesn't want to edit your paper. They have that choice to choose. You have that choice to choose. That's in partnership. And then it's honoring yourself. So if something happens and you're feeling like, oh my God, I can't say anything, the first person that you need to be partners with is yourself, because you have to be able to open up and explain what it is that you want in this partnership. So honoring yourself and then honoring other people. And when you're in this spirit, this human spirit, conscious choice area, you are full of energy. You're being open to other suggestions. The experience that you get out of this, opposite of fear, is joy and happiness and empowerment. Let's go to the third slide. So now, how does this play a part in human spirit, in relationships and in partnerships? So first thing, there's a very big difference between a relationship and a partnership. And I really didn't know the difference for a very long time. When people say partnerships, we think of businesses, right? We think of like, I'm in partnership with this business. When in fact, partnerships are not really about the business. It's really about people. Relationships, now, we also think relationships, oh, well, that's my husband or that's my wife or that's my kids. That's a relationship. But actually, a real definition of a relationship is a state of being related. So it can be family ties, family connections, right? Romantic or whatever. But it's also a state of relating. So it's human connection between two people. And that could be mental, physical, or emotional. And then it could also be people engaging in an enterprise and a business where there is risk and profit. And sometimes the relationships will last for a long, long time. It could be like a work relationship where you're in business for 30 years and, that eventually becomes a partnership, but it started off as a relationship. And I'm going to explain why the difference is. So relationships can be times where as long as the activity is happening, okay? So it could be this author group, right? You could be in a relationship with everybody in this group. And then down the road, you don't write books anymore and therefore you're not in the group anymore. So the relationships dwindle. So there's nothing wrong with a relationship. Relationships are really good. I have some relationships in my life that I prefer them to be relationships versus partnerships because of just our different beliefs. But relationships, the cornerstone of a relationships is expectations. And what I mean by that is when you expect something from someone and they don't know you're expecting it, you have this idea in your mind that that expectation is based on that relationship, is based on that partnership, and it's not a partnership. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So in a relationship, you're focused on yourself. You're not focused on the other person. You're not focused on, well, how can we win at this, right? How can I win what I want and you win what you want and come to an agreement? That's would be a partnership. It's not about teamwork. Relationship is not about teamwork. So if somebody is not accountable for their part, then you don't have a partnership. You have a relationship, usually in a state of compulsion. So you're hurry, hurry, hurry. You're trying to get everything that you need. You're being forced to do something. So there's no choice in a relationship. And one of the biggest things is we don't ask what we need. So we just assume that the other person in this relationship knows what we want. And you'll hear people say things like, well, he didn't bring me flowers, but he knows I love flowers. But yet you didn't tell him that you liked flowers. You just assumed that you like flowers. And so that expectation of, well, I should get flowers on my birthday is a relationship thing. It's not a partnership thing. Partnership thing would be if you actually told him, I would love to have flowers, on my birthday. And most people will say, well, why do I have to tell him, right? Why do I have to tell her that that's what I want? And the bottom line is communication. And that's a partnership, is working towards each other for that win-win. So the expectations, which most of the time we don't even see those expectations. It's not obvious that we have that expectation, but expectations live in the relationships. And if you happen to pull yourself and say, oh, he should have known or she should have known, that's an expectation. That's a key way of, if you get it into your brain and you just go, okay, if I just said should, and now every time that I do say should, I stop, because I'm like, oh my God, that's an expectation. Did I tell that person I wanted that? Or did I tell them I needed that by a certain date? So if you say the word should, 9 out of 10 times, that's an expectation that you have not shared with the other person. So again, expectations can be, in our world of authors, it can be, printing will be complete by the date of April 14th. Well, printing may be complete, but shipping isn't complete. So you have the expectation, well, I'm going to get my books by April 14th because she said that they're going to be done. But she didn't say they're going to be shipped by then. Clarity is one of the key tools that would help if you could clear that up and say, well, are you really printing them on April 14th? Or are you shipping them on April 14th? Or am I getting them on April 14th? So clarity is one of the tools that you can use for partnership. And again, we'll talk a little bit more on expectations. So relationships live in that human normal survival place, okay? And partnerships, on the other hand, they live in the human spirit, the conscious choice place, because in partnerships, you can choose who you want to be partners with. And they can choose if they want to be partners with you. And you're not being forced into a partnership. So say you've got 3 illustrators, right? And this happened to me. I had 3 illustrators that I asked for copies of sketches. And one illustrator sent back the copies and absolutely loved them. Another illustrator sent back and it was like, oh, she's not quite what I'm looking for. So she emails me or messaged me and says, I was just wondering, do you like the sketches? And I'm like, yeah, it's not really what I'm looking for, and she literally kept sending me email after email after email, but I really want to do your book, but I really want to do your book, but I really want to do your book. And I had to literally get to the point and say, you know what, I'm sorry, but I don't see it as a fit for my book. You do beautiful work. I love what you do, but it doesn't shout out at me. That's not a partnership. I did not want to be in partnership with her. It was a one-sided. She wanted to be in partnership with me. So we still talk on Facebook and we're in a relationship, right? We can literally, talk back and forth. But even weeks later, she's like, so when's your next book coming out? Can I do your next book? So partnership has to be a two-way street, right? It has to be 2 people working together, 2 or more people working together. You've got to be on the same team. You've got to have the same goals. And each partnership is going to be unique and custom to that type of partnership, of what you want. As I said, one of the most important things to do is ask what you need. And that means ask them what they need too. If you both know what each other needs, you're going to be able to successfully be in partnership with one another and accomplish the goal that you're after. And then if they're not accountable and if you're not accountable, there's no partnership. So both people have to be accountable. And this is really important because you can't take somebody else's accountability. If you do, then you're not in partnership. That's a human spirit thing. That's out of fear. That's out of scarcity. That's out of survival mode. Another reason why you would want to partner with somebody is being up to something that's bigger than what you can accomplish on your own. So in other words, we all know that unless we are both an author and an illustrator, even at that point, we can't publish a book by ourselves. We need you, April. We need the work group. We need each other, right? And the other thing is partnership is not a noun, right? It's not I'm in partnership. It's a verb. It's actually being in partnership with somebody, which is a very big difference between just being partners with somebody. So when you think of being in partnership with somebody, you think of actually being accountable for your part and their part, right? They're being accountable for their part. So you've got those two things, but you're actually being present to that partnership. Accountability is the number one tool that you always have to start partnership with.
Yeah.
If you don't have accountability, you don't have partnership. So clarity is not going to work, and communication is not going to work, and holding space is not going to work. You have to start with accountability. And then there's other things that's going to end up building that partnership to be a better partnership, stronger partnership. So I always love to give this analogy. Like, I want to sum up what partnership and relationships are in a way that you guys can have something in your head, right? Your thought and your visions, right? So if you look on the left, you're going to see a chair that says relationship on it, right? So you're sitting in the chair and basically you're doing nothing for the chair. You're not holding the chair up. The chair's holding you up. You're just sitting, relaxing, it's serving your purpose. Now, in a relationship, that can happen two ways. You could be the chair where you just sit and hold up everything. So say you're sitting in the chair and all you're doing is just sitting there. You're taking, right? You're not giving anything. Say you're the chair and you're giving everything, right? You're holding that person up. You're there for them, for their comfort. You're giving. Okay. That's a relationship. But the second picture down here on the bottom, that is partnership. And why I call that partnership is because it's a teeter-totter. So if anybody remembers when they're little, to play on the teeter-totter, what did you need? You need two people, right? You need to have somebody on both sides. And when somebody's pushing up, the other person is going down and vice versa, right? And you're going back and forth, up and down, up and down. Well, a teeter-totter is very much like a partnership, right? You give and take, you're fully engaged. Person takes turn pushing up, person takes turn pushing down. And in partnership, both people are working towards elevating one another. So both people are like, yeah, I want to get you as far up as I possibly can. And the other person, I want to get you up as far as I can. And it's the same with authors. I want to make sure that our book, and I say our book because again, I'm going to reference it, but it's a collaboration. It's a partnership with somebody. So our book is going to be the best book possible. So I want to give you all the tools. I want to be that one to elevate you so that when I need the elevation, you're going to give it to me. That's a partnership. And what that does is it makes it fun, right? Relationship's not fun, right? You can survive it, but it's just not fun. But a teeter-totter, it's fun. Playing back and forth with one another, being on that call with your illustrator, working with each other and having that partnership, it can be fulfilling. It can be sustainable, right? It can keep going. But the problem is that if one person gets off, the game's over, right? So if one person walks away from partnership, it's over. And then the reason why I have this picture of the heart with the hand is because the very first partnership that you really have to honor is yourself. So that is what I call a heart partner. You can have people be heart partners with you, but you have to remember to honor yourself first. So if you have something that you have to say and, honoring yourself is actually bringing it to the table. I remember one of my friends said to me one time, he said, if somebody says this phrase to you, I'm going to be brutally honest with you, you need to just literally say, I don't really need to hear it, because brutally is what they're going to be. People that are honest do it in a partnership way, do it in a caring way, do it in not a way that you're going to get hurt your feelings, do it in an open human spirit way. And so the first partnership is yourself, and then the rest partnership falls into play. And if you can be partners with yourself, you can be partners with anybody else, because you've got those boundaries, you've got that communication, you've got the tools that you need to be partners with yourself first. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into the tools. So I like to say this is a recipe for partnership, and there are 14 elements that I studied about partnership. We're going to actually touch on the first 7, even though entrusting is the last one, because entrusting is kind of like, I call it like the salt of the recipe, where it kind of mingles over all of these ingredients. Okay. So these 14 are all ingredients into the recipe of partnership, but entrusting has to be in all of them. And I'll explain why in a little while. So again, we start out with accountability, right? We have to be accountable. We have to choose to be accountable, and it's a way of being. And so when you're in human spirit, it's not about me deciding or the other person deciding. It's about we deciding, right? We deciding what our part is, what I can literally bring to the table, and what the other person can say he can bring or she can bring to the table. And if they say, I can't be accountable for that, that means that they can't. And if you force them to be accountable, if you don't give them the choice to walk away, then it's going to be a disaster because your expectations are going to come in. It's going to be all human normal. It's not going to be human spirit. It's about what's my part, what's your part, and together what you decide is the what, the how, and the when. So what are we working at? We're working towards publishing a book. The how are we going to get there? Okay, well, the first step is we did this course. We have April to guide us through and help us with all of the little nitty gritty things that we wouldn't normally know. And then the when. So when are we going to get together? This is a huge one. When is the sketches going to be done? When is the coloring going to be done? Those deadlines. And those deadlines, it's not you as the author need to tell the illustrator or the graphic designer. It's the graphic designer that suggests when that needs to be done, because he's or she's the only one that knows how long it's going to take them to do it. So to be in partnership, they say April 15th, the sketches are going to be done. And I say, you know what? That's a little too long. Can we get it done by April 10th? And he can come back and say yes or no. But if he does say yes, okay, then that's the date he's accountable for. And if there's things he needs from you, you need to be understanding that you need to get those things to him in order for him to make that date. So it's important to get the what, the how, and the when in your contract. Again, it's important not to take over their accountability. Even though we think it's helpful, it's not. And you can literally say to them, is there anything I can do to make this work? Is there anything I can do to help us win-win? And they'll tell you. And sometimes it might be something so crazy that you just go, okay, I can do that, but I don't know why. And then you can ask them, well, is there a reason why you want me to do that? Or is there a reason why you need that? And that allows them to open up and say, yes, this is why I need this. Again, you never know what it is that they need, but asking them, is there anything that I can do to help you? Then that's offering them. And if they say no, then just say, okay. And then again, expectations, right, limits your partnership. If you have an expectation, when you're expecting somebody to do something, and you're actually just expecting it, but you don't ask them, can they do it? That's an expectation. So you need to be very clear and say, can you do this? So that there's no assumptions, there's nothing that's going through your head saying that he could or she could do it. And that will eliminate stress and anxiety that it might cause. The next one is space. So there are 4 kinds of space that I'm going to talk about very quickly. There's lots of spaces, but the space I'm going to talk about is number 1, physical space. And that's probably the easiest to understand. That's why I put it in this, is because you see physical space, right? You see your area. You can even see on a Zoom, right? The physical space, what we live in, work in, environment. Our bodies are our physical space, right? The second one is mental space, right? It's your thinking thoughts. When you have a ton on your plate and you just can't handle one more thing, that space, it's overloaded. And it's emotional space. That's when you feel that joy or sadness or fear or anger or happiness or trust or distrust with the boxes of books that were warped. I felt that, oh my God, what am I going to do? Kind of thing in my emotional space. And I couldn't think anything else beyond that. Like, how am I going to get these books to these people? Now I have 60 less books. So that's emotional space. And then time space. And this is like key because time space is really important in the author world, right? We need to make sure that we can get our Kickstarters going and we can get our books online. And we're even partnering with KDP if you really want to figure it out, because if they don't put our books up, we don't sell any books. So there's a partnership there too. So time space is scheduling and having enough time or not having enough time to do something for somebody or be accountable for something. So how you can navigate this is by holding space. And what holding space means is it's consciously thinking about these four spaces and being present. So don't doing multiple things. We're all, especially women, are great at multitasking. But you need to just stay in the present moment and do those day-to-day activities and moment to moment, right? And hold that space. And what happens is you eventually can overcome the emotions. If you're holding your space, you can say, okay, I can think about this logically. If I get rid of Thursday night's class and spend that time editing my book, then I'll get it in time to get it to Friday's edit. So it allows you to open up those spaces, open up the mental space that you have, open up the temporal space, right? When you're having this time space. You can tell when you're not holding space when your body tenses up. And it has to be immediate. And that's human normal. That's where our instincts come in. That's where the fear comes in. That's where survival comes in. And if you notice, if you've got kids, you'll notice that kids do not have any sort of space. Like they don't understand space. So like they will jump on your lap and you're in the middle of something. And, your human normal might be, come on, give me a break. Leave me alone. Give me 5 minutes. No idea of space. It's something that they eventually learn over time. And so that's when the human normal might come out. And then consistency. So this is another key one, consistency. And the definition of consistency is a way of being predictable, a way of being dependable. So in the topic of consistency, notice where you are consistent and where you're not consistent. So for me, I've noticed that I will read an email and then I don't respond back. Now, in partnership, that email might have been really important. It might have had a deadline in it. So I need to learn to be more consistent at, okay, I'm reading that email and now do I put it in draft so I can go back and look at it? Because in old mail, it gets lost. Or do I make a note saying I need to go and respond to that? Or do I stop right now and respond to it? But when you notice it, when you actually are in partnership with yourself and you notice that one of your areas to work on is consistency, then you can actually get stronger in that. And it's like building a muscle. So notice when you become aware of the times that you're not consistent and the times that you are consistent. And when you are consistent, give yourself a pat on the back because that will help you to reaffirm that you're being consistent. And then the other thing too, and this is scary, but the other thing too is if somebody else that you're partnering with is not being consistent, it's time to say, you know what, I noticed that, when I send you an email, you don't respond back. And sometimes it's 5 or 6 days. Can we make an agreement? Can we come up with a time that, okay, within 24 hours, I'm going to email you back or you're going to email me back? Is that something you could be accountable for? And they'll say, well, you know what? 24 hours might not work. 48 hours might work. And then you say, well, okay, that works for me. Or no, that doesn't work for me. Can we do maybe 36 hours? And I know you're getting nitty gritty, but the bottom line is it's clarity. So you're not sitting there wondering, why didn't they respond back to me? And even in text messages, right? When people don't respond back, we automatically go with, oh my God, they're not going to tell me or they're hiding something. We never think that there's another reason for it. I remember I dated this one guy and he would respond back really fast sometimes. And then other times he wouldn't. And so finally one night I said to him, I'm just curious, why do you respond back sometimes, but you don't respond back other times? And he's like, well, sometimes it's like I'm in the middle of something or I'm in the middle of the woods or like there's always a reason, but never, ever think that there's a negative reason for it. I'll get to you when I can get to you. And so I said to him, well, it would make me feel a whole lot better if, I knew that at least I could get an okay or something. And if you can't do that, and he's like, well, sometimes I can, but if I'm not in a place I can, then, when I do get to that place, I could definitely give you a text message. And I'm like, okay. So we got it cleared up so that the next time I text him and didn't get a message back, I wasn't having these things in my head going, oh yeah, it must be because he's, something stupid, which is always something stupid. So anyway, consistency is really important in partnership. So the next one is clarity. And clarity is seeing the what. So, whatever it is that you're working towards, right? So, publishing a book, what's the what? Okay. Well, how can we be as clear as possible with clarity? Number one, you could say, okay, this is what I picture. So, when you're having that talk with your illustrator and you're coming up with your mocked book and you're telling them what your ideas are, this is what I see. What do you see? Because sometimes illustrators have amazing ideas that we would never think of. So get that clarity there. Or, do you need anything from me to make it clearer? So do you need, cartoons from me? Do you need the special font? Do you need, more detail? What do you need from me to help with this partnership? Of course, clarity with timeline. Timeline is like a huge thing, right? So you can't just leave it as, well, I'm going to publish my book in June. It's like, okay, well, what's my date that I want to aim for? June 15th. So giving that June 15th date allows illustrator, the graphic designer, everybody to know that's when I expect everything to be done. So that's when we were hoping that this is what was going to get done. I caught myself on the expecting. But when you talk about it, it's not an expectation because you're actually telling them, okay, this is what I want. Can that work for you? So again, partnership. And then another key is letting them know, again, what it provides for you. So it provides me the ability to get my Kickstarter going. It provides me the ability to set it up with the printer. It provides me the ability to send it to my launch team before anybody else in the public gets out of it. So give them the reasons why you need it at that date. And then the next one is acknowledgement. And this is a really important thing because most people just assume that, you're acknowledging them without using any words or anything. But acknowledgement and appreciation kind of go together. And when you're acknowledging, if you notice in the word acknowledge, there's the word know, K-N-O-W, as a verb. Acknowledging means to know or to bring to knowledge. So to statement of fact. So when you're acknowledging something, you're stating a fact for that person. So it's not personal. There's no emotional energy on it. I'm stating a fact. I'd like to have my book done by June 16th. But one way to acknowledge somebody is to actually pay attention and be present and in the moment so that you can notice how they're listening and how they're speaking to you and what your partner is saying or what they're not saying. So when you acknowledge that you're present with them and that you're asking them what it is that they're doing, like they're part of it, you actually say, okay, I acknowledge that you did that for me. I appreciate it. They go hand in hand because when you just appreciate somebody, acknowledgement makes it more meaningful because acknowledgement isn't really an emotional thing. So when you are using appreciation and acknowledgement, you're actually patting that person on the back, so to speak, and giving them that like, oh my God, she noticed. And that makes the other person feel so much better and solidifies your partnership with them. So acknowledging what they're doing. And I also want to point out that you've got to be authentic, right? You can't just use these things and not feel it in your body, right? You have to be able to be authentic with it because then it comes across as you're just either sucking up or brown nosing or whatever you want to call it. But when you're truly authentic, it comes from the heart. And so that makes that other person feel good. Appreciation is the number one key to people wanting to do it again for you. It's been studied. And again, it's got to come from your heart, right? You can't just pretend that you appreciate somebody. It's got to come from within. And so a sincere appreciation allows the other person to go, wow, you know what? They really appreciated that for me. I'm going to go above and beyond again. But when you don't get appreciation, when you don't get acknowledgement, you basically are like, well, why do I bother? Right? What's the effort? Like, what's the purpose? So those two go really hand in hand. And one of the other things that I learned in my training and my research is that when you add two little words to the end of a thank you, it actually enhances it. So the two little words are for me. Now, I know this sounds crazy. And at first I was like, oh my God, why would I have to say, thank you for holding the door for me? But the bottom line is it makes it personal, right? So it's so different. And so try this out, everybody. When you do something for somebody, right? Acknowledge it and don't say for me, and then do it again for somebody else and say for me and see the difference between the body language, between how they responded to you, because it makes it personal. And then the last one is entrusting. And as I said, this is like the salt, right? This is like the little bit of like flavor for all of these. And entrusting is actually a verb. You're entrusting someone to something. It's not the word trust, because that's different. Entrusting is actually putting something or someone in somebody's care, and it's an ongoing process. So it's not just a one-time deal. You're in a state of being and you're requiring it for two or more people. And this is something that is builds up over time. So in our author world, when you're working with an illustrator, say you work with the illustrator once, twice, three times, each time you work with them, if you use these tools for partnership, you will eventually become entrusted to one another. And how I like to explain this, and it's going to sound a little crazy too, but why not, is that our books are very much like a baby. It's our baby. We write it. We have this vision for it. We want to make it come alive. We birth it on the publication. So it's very important to us. But it's also important to the editors, to the illustrators that you partner with, to the graphic designers, to anybody else that you partner with, because you're all working towards the same goal, which is publishing this book. So I always look at it as, okay, I wrote the words, so I have the baby in my hand. I'm going to hand the baby over to Bobby. And Bobby, although I'm not going to let my hands go from the baby, Bobby is going to do her magic and do her editing. And then she's going to hand the baby back to me. But we've entrusted the baby with one another. And then I'm going to hand that over to Pradee. But I'm still going to keep my hands on it, because there's still going to be things that he's going to ask me for, things that I need to give him a yes or a no for. And there's going to be things he needs to give me a yes or no for, just like it was with Bobby. He does his job and he entrusts it back to me. And then we go to the graphic designer. So that in the end, our book is actually a collaboration of all of these wonderful partnerships that we have. Our book represents everybody that worked on it, even our launch team, even our co-authors that have helped each other in many, many ways. And eventually what happens is you end up like, okay, I can give you the baby and I know you're going to get it. So maybe 3 books down, I might be able to say, Pradee, I'm all for whatever your ideas are, and give you the baby and you take care of the baby. And then when you're done, you give the baby back to me. So entrusting is something that you earn. It's something that you work towards. It's something that over time gets stronger. And it's something that all of these other tools are part of. You have to have some entrusting in clarity. You have to have some entrusting in consistency. You have to have some entrusting in space, in accountability, right? You have to have that little bit in order, and it builds up along the way. And that's it.
I'm so happy that this worked out and that you were able to do this, because I think it's great to just talk about this stuff, reflect on it, especially when we're not in the midst of things. And based on all that you shared, I already have some tools in my toolbox that I haven't been using as much as I need to, and it's such a great reminder. So thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that for us.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for everybody that's participated. And it's so awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Take care.